How wonderful our world looks, isn't it, children? Such an intriguing, beautiful globe. As it turns and twirls, we would love to know more about it. Was the world always like this? How was it in the past? How is it evolving? How will it be in the future? What are the different landforms on it? What are the different countries? Who are the people living in it? In which branch of science can we learn about all this? That, children, branch is known as the social science branch. Social science has been divided into many branches. The main three of them are history, geography, and political science. But there are many other kinds of sciences attached to it, like anthropology, archaeology, economics, law, linguistics, politics, psychology, and sociology. But generally, we deal with three subdivisions, which is history, geography, and political science. Geography stands for the different kinds of landforms, and political science includes the rest, like law and politics and all that under it. Then, what does history hold? So, what is history? History is learning about the past. It is not only learning about the different kinds of people or the events or the dynasties which took place, but it also means learning about the people with their customs, traditions, culture, the way of life, religion, the evolution of humankind through all the stages to reach the present. That is what the study of past is. That is history. The knowledge of past is the only way through which you can take the correct decisions for the present. Think, children, if we don't know how to deal with the past, how can we plan for the future? Humans will keep on making the same mistakes again and again, right? Learning about the past gives us the power to control our future. So, history is a very important part. Now, it deals with four main aspects: what, where, how, and when. This branch of studies helps us to understand what we have done so that we can see what we are doing to help us to plan what to do: the past, the present, and the future. I'm sure you have all eaten ice creams, right? That cold taste, that sweet taste on your tongue. After some time, the taste disappears when you eat something else. But next time, when you walk on the road and see an ice cream parlor, don't you remember the taste which you had? That is known as memory. When you are able to remember what was the taste of the ice cream which you ate, you recollect it back because you have retained in your brain. This is the memory of the taste of the ice cream. Recollection, you bring it back to your mind. What has already been retained, retention. Same way in a society, just think what would have happened if humans did not have any memory at all. They would keep on committing the same mistakes again and again. If that is the case, will there be any progress of the human beings? Of course not. So, if humans, that is, if we need memory to progress, then what can be assumed as the memory of an entire society or as a nation? Yes, history serves like a memory services to the humankind to survive. History is the memory of the society or a state or a nation because it helps all of us to take correct decisions for the future. Just look at this, children. How much our world has evolved. I think you've all seen Jurassic World, and many of you would have seen those movies so many times, and all those different dinosaurs, the sweet ones, the ones which helped those kids in the movies, and the ones which tried to devour them. There is so much of change from that dinosaur times, isn't it? Slowly the humans evolved, cavemen were born, civilizations occurred, like we have our civilizations. Then came up kingdoms when man decided to culture himself. Then slowly India came under the British rule. The East India Company was set up. Then India secured its freedom from the British rule, and now we are a very strong and a modern nation. So it's a lot of evolution which has been going on to bring us to this particular state. Now, what does history do? History narrates the journey of the human beings. When you systematically record how the humans have evolved, that is known as history. So it points out to the failures and highlights the success of human beings in their journey through time. So much spoken about history, right? I'm sure you'll all be having a doubt. Now, what is the difference between a history and a story? We all keep hearing historical accounts from our elders. They keep telling us about kings and queens who were there and what kind of wonderful decisions they took in their courts. But also, we hear so many stories by our old grandmothers. They have told us Panchatantra stories and so on. Now, how do we differentiate? Both are stories. There is a slide you can see that foolish crow and the clever fox. I'm sure all of you come across the story where the fox convinces the crow to throw the piece from its mouth. Now, this is imagination. Can a fox talk? Will a crow listen and throw its piece of bread from the mouth? It is just a story told by the grandmother to the children. It's only imagination. But on the other side, you can see the picture of Taj Mahal. Again, we have heard stories of Shah Jahan building Taj Mahal for his wife, the love for his wife. Now, this is also a story, but this story is based on true events. So, when you create a proper narration based on true events, only then we can call it a history. History was not recognized much as a branch in the earlier time. It was Herodotus of Greece who was the first person to show the world how to construct this immensely valuable history. He is known for having written the book The Histories, which was a detailed record of the origins of the Greco-Persian Wars. His narrative was the first narrative which was written with a basis of inquiry into the wars. It's because of his book, The Histories, that now we have recorded history. That is why, children, he is called as the father of history. Herodotus of the Greece is known as the father of history. Who was known as the father of history, children? Herodotus. Children, we all love to read storybooks, right? We love the different comic books. When we were small, we used to read Amar Chitra Katha, where we used to come across so many different stories. And I'm sure all of you have read Panchatantra, right? And also you have heard tales of Birbal, the wit and wisdom of Tenali Rama, the great adventures of King Vikramaditya, the wonderful decisions and the great warriors and so on. But have you ever thought that how many of these stories are really true? How many of the accounts are actually correct? We don't know, right? Yes. To know whether the accounts are true or not, we need some source. Let's look at another example. I'm sure in your last class you have all drawn family tree, right? In 5th standard you have learnt about a family, you have drawn a family tree and you have traced back generations, yourself, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents and so on. The source of your family tree is the eldermost member, correct? They give you the information about all the other family members. Such a way you need sources to learn history. Only when you have reliable sources which accept the narration given can it become history. So it is true, right? Can you have history without sources? Okay, what is a source? A source is a place. A source could be a person. A source could be a book. A source is something from which we get reliable, correct information. Now, a person who can construct history based on the correct information is known as a historian. So, children, who is a historian? The one who constructs history is called as a historian. Now, the sources are classified into two major parts. One is the literary source, the other is the archaeological source. Come, children, let's see the sources of history in a detailed manner. We already know that the sources of history has been branched into literary sources and archaeological sources. Right, children? Let us take up individually. Literary sources. What is literature? Anything which we read or write is known as literature. So, based on that, we can divide the literary sources into written literature and oral literature. Let's take up written literature now. Written literature can further be subdivided into native literature and foreign literature. As you can see here, native literature, you can see that it is all our languages. Hindi, the other languages, everything, the alphabets are there. What does that denote? The literature written in our country, in our language, is known as native literature. So, what is foreign literature? The literature written in other languages, which is outside our country, is foreign to our country. So, that is known as foreign literature. Please repeat, children. There are two groups of your written literature. What are the two groups? Please repeat after me. Native literature and foreign literature. Now, the native literature can further be divided into secular literature and non-secular literature. What does this word secular mean? When any writing is based on praising the God, the religion, then it is known as secular writing. It could be praises of God, it could be poems based on God, It will just mention anything which pertains to any religion. It could be Hindu literature, Buddhist literature, or Jain literature. But these religions are native religions. You can see some examples, children. The Vedas, the Puranas, the Upanishads are great epics, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Buddhist Tripitakas and Jain texts all denote secular literature. This acts like a source for our history, as we can learn so much about our customs and religions from this literature. What is the other division of native literature, children? Yes, non-secular literature. Since we have learnt what is a secular literature, now you have to understand that any writing which is not based on a religion or singing the praise of a god is known as a non-secular literature. So if it is not on religion, then what is this non-secular literature based on? These are written as scripts about some king, some major events. It could be the coronation of a king, or it could be the praises of the welfare of what the king had done, the wonderful administration, and it is mostly recorded by the court poets of the different kings. If we travel more early in the history, in India we can see that we have certain wonderful literature which teaches political science. Excellent examples of Manusmriti, Kautilya's Artha Shastra, which shows how a government has to be ruled. Mudra Rakshasa of Vishakatatta, Rajatarangini, Harshacharita, and so many. You cannot name them, children. They are innumerable. There are so many non-secular literature. Each and every king had a court recorder in his court who would write all the events which took place in the king's court. These serve as excellent sources of the administration, the different other kingdoms which existed during that period of the king. Aren't these all wonderful sources of history, children? I hope now you have understood that native literature can be divided into, please repeat, children, secular literature and non-secular literature. Children, here are some points to remember. Please go through them slowly and carefully. You have already listened to the class today. I am sure you have understood everything. Now let's do a simple fill in the blanks for you to recap what we did today. The first one, the systematic presentation of past events is called. Second one, there cannot be history without. Third, a person who constructs history is called a. Fourth, native sources are also called as. Literature based on religion is called. This is an activity which you would all love. Now we have learnt about the different sources of history, right, children? Now here are some pictures on the four corners of the slide. You have to look at them, identify to which type of source they belong to. The answers to all these two will be discussed in the next class. Thank you, children.